Previously on Spring Breeze. So I took a look at the voiceover that I made for mirae, and it happened to be 8 minutes long. So I decided to clip that out and save it for another video where I discuss the album and also just about debut albums in general and how they set the tone for K-pop debuts in general. Well, isn't it finally time to let mirae out of the dusty dungeon? Hi loves, welcome back. Good to see you all here again today on this wonderful day. Now, before I start this video, first and foremost, it's raining outside. If you can hear the rain, my apologies. I don't know why I'm doing this in this rainy hour. Maybe it helps with the vibe, with the ambiance a little bit, and also keeping myself quiet because my parents are asleep. So you're getting ASMR breeze. ASMR breeze, spring ASMR, whatever. And before I start this video, let it be known to the rest of the world that I am not a professional video essayist of some sort. I don't know how to do video essays at all. I'm just someone with a lot of thoughts that is begged to be let out. So here it is, the waterfall of thoughts about a debut album that I very much raved for most of March, as well as some ramble about the importance of debut albums. Will this video have anything of intellect? Probably, but it's just a bunch of word salad. I hope you guys are ready for it anyways, but for now, mirae. My current thoughts of this album still hasn't changed much as of May, so before we discuss about debut albums, enjoy this chapter of me gushing about this album to my heart's content. Let's go. Chapter 1. Back to the Future. Okay, we need to talk about mirae real quick. This section might be way too long for my own good, so buckle up, people. I have a lot to talk about mirae. So as far as DSP groups go, I think mirae is the first boy group in over almost a decade to debut under DSP, which is I haven't seen a DSP boy group in a while, so seeing mirae really raises my eyebrows and really raises my expectations a bit. And also having Dongpyo in the group, he was from X1 back then, having him in the group really also raises my expectations a little bit for them. And when they debuted, I was immediately blown away by how just clear and just clean their concept is. I absolutely love their concept a lot. They, like Ghost 9, also lives in a video game world, and can we all just agree to let Ghost 9 and mirae meet each other one day? Like, they can meet each other and then they can be video game besties. I also like the thought process behind this boy group. The musical concept behind them is basically like one day someone at the DSP headquarters just decided, hey, you know what we're gonna go for our boy group concept? Geometry Dash. And that's the concept.
Ultimate destruction.
This title track, Killer, is very reminiscent of like SM boy group songs, especially NCT 127's Superhuman and some Super M songs like 100 and kind of a little bit of Infinity, One Plus Monster. But the thing that mirae is supplemented to the table that I think is a little bit missing in these the SM boy group songs that I mentioned earlier is that they really committed to the concept. Oftentimes when there's this kind of futuristic concept, I like those concepts generally, but there is a little bit of like, it could have been executed more, like they could have pushed the futuristic concept harder, and they could have pushed the, they really need to commit to the bit real quick, at least for me. And I think with mirae, they really hit the nails on the head. With Killer, I think they really executed the futuristic concept super well. They sang with the force of 1,000 suns. Each member really has their standout part. I absolutely really adore each member's parts. They got gorgeous lines. They got really mesmerizing vocals, really captivating raps. I could have asked for a better song. I still think that this is really up there in terms of debut album quality. And I mean, a lot of people think that title track set the tone for a debut, but to me, a full proper album sets the tone for a debut. And I think that this album really is really strong. It's just that for me, there's just one song in the middle, I think Swagger, that I still haven't fully clicked with yet, which is ultimately the least favorite song on the album. But the rest of the songs is actually really solid. I actually really like the level of quality throughout each and every song on the album. The level of care and attention that went into this boy group debut is you can really tell the amount of care and love that is taken in this boy group debut, and I really commend everyone for this amazing debut. Wonderful job. I'm so impressed. Speaking of video game concepts, the music video really has that sort of like a futuristic, almost like a video game concept in on itself. The entire music video can be like a video game cutscene of sorts. Like, you know that one part where like Junhyuk was like floating on like a rock or something like that with like the ambient sounds around him, and then like there's like waterfalls behind him with like the electricity running. Oh my god! That's my favorite scene on the entire music video. I love that. The only thing missing from that is like that one like deep voice narrator that is like saying some sort of like prophetic wisdom or something like that. He like the entire scene, Junhyuk looks like he's about to tell me that I need to go fulfill some sort of ancient prophecy to slay some sort of futuristic demon to save the entire world. Like, he's telling me that I need to go fulfill that prophecy. He also looks like he's about to start speaking in poetry. oh, oh my god. He looks like he's about to start speaking in like this really wisdom deep voice, like, you need to go out there and be the water that saves the... I don't know. I don't... And also, like, each member in the group also look like they could be like some sort of like video game character. Like, you have like a half human, half cyborg characters. You have your you have your tech genius characters. You have your wise sage character. I'm telling you, this debut is something else. Okay, they're built different. Mirae is built different. Okay, I love their world building. I just wish that one day we get to see like a merge of like On and Off's beautiful, Ghost 9's Wall, Mirae's Killer, and then they just be like this one massive world, and it can be turned into a video game, like an adventure game, or like even a fighting game or something. So like each member can be like a separate fighting character, and it can be like a tag team type fighting game. I tell you, I've been recently watching gameplays of Blaze Blue's tag team tournament, and oh my god, it has those vibes. Like, Ghost 9 can be like the Persona 4 of that game, and then I don't know, Mirae can be like the something is it like In-Birth, the In-Birth games, I think they can be like the In-Birth characters. But also one of yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking. But yeah, I have so much more to talk about this group, but yeah, I'm afraid that I have to cut this one short because yeah, it would take me all day to finish it. So all I'm saying is, go listen to this album. It will change your life. I know it has changed mine. Seriously, these boys are very promising. I'm pretty sure they're gonna have a very bright future ahead of them. Wonderful job to Mirae. I can't wait to see what they can offer in the future. Chapter 2. Blast to the Past. When talking about Mirae's album, it made me think a lot about the debut albums I've listened to over the years. It really just hits differently when an artist is confident with displaying a collection of introductory songs in a cohesive package to show themselves to the world for the very first time. Just a note before we begin, I didn't start listening to albums until around 2015, 2016. That goes for every music album, you know, C-pop, English pop, Western pop, K-pop, whatever pop. So goodness knows there are a bunch more debut albums out there that I have yet to dip my toes into. The examples I'll be using in the later case studies and sections are from albums that have came out within the last decade or so, and some of my personal favorites of all time. Alright, debut albums. Every single year sees a chock full of debuts of various genres popping into the ever-expanding South Korean music industry. And when I say chock full, I mean it. Just based on the number of debuts I've managed to find for my 2020 debuts video, so many artists are looking to get their names out there, to the point that a lot of them could potentially get lost in the sea of artists. Not just the ones that debuted this year or the last year, but ones that have already been in the industry for a while. 100 debuts per year on average can get very competitive, so a debuting artist needs to do something to establish their musical identity, differentiate themselves from the pack, and let the world know that they have their own story to tell. And that's where albums come in. Now, I understand that a lot of agencies might not afford to provide albums to artists right off the bat, and instead opted to release singles or single albums of a few songs instead, whether in digital or physical format or both. Lots of the under-the-radar idol groups don't even release albums until years after debut. The examples I can think of off the top of my head are Greyish with their first mini M this year, 410 with Jack of All Trades in 2016, Tahiti with their two minis 5 Beats of Heart in 2014, or is it 2013? 2013, and Fall into Temptation in 2016, etc. It could also be a marketing or artistic decision too. Choosing to release singles until they are ready to release an album is a practice that many artists of any genre specification does. But when a debuting artist comes up with an EP or an LP, the gesture really piques my interest, as a handful of songs can allow artists to explore what style and genre they're good at, as well as identifying potential that can be tapped into in future releases. I consider debut albums as a great outlet for the research and development of an artist's musical identity. They can just try whatever sounds they want to try, and if they are happy with it, they can try honing that sound in future releases. However, that doesn't mean one can just select a bunch of songs willy-nilly, put it in a CD and call it an album. There is a certain level of quality assurance that needs to be met, which we will explore later in sections to come. Now, I'm not very good at explaining stuff because I trip over my words often, but what I can do is guide you through some albums as examples so we can explore what makes debut albums work together. Let's take a look. Chapter 3, A Ride Through Time. Here we are, folks, my debut album's Hall of Fame. These are the debut albums I pretty much treasure and still go back to often, and I consider them solid gold in each artist's discography. They left a lasting impact on my mind, and they pretty much blew me away even though I barely knew them at all. I will not talk too long about each album, just some noteworthy moments or standouts within the album that left a lasting impact on me as a listener of music. Let's first take a look at something pretty recent. Now, somewhere in the depths of my Google Drive folder, I had a script for when I talked about my top 30 albums of 2020, but I never got to make that video due to not knowing how to structure that video, as well as, academics with my most stressful weeks leading up to assignment submission season. So it never saw the light of day, kinda. But what I can do now is take some parts of the script and use it here. So yay, it somehow saw the light of day eventually. Gravity's debut album makes them a standout amongst 2020 idol group debuts, possibly the most cohesive and strongest entry of the year. There's a sort of well-seasoned energy within this album. The songs are sung with the force of 1,000 suns, and it makes everyone quiver before them, because this album introduces the group as a force to be reckoned with. Electropop is their best friend, as songs like Jumper and Blackout are some of the best crafted songs of the genre. The pacing is excellent. Some of the grittier songs are placed up front before Stay transitions us into their more wholesome and lighter sounds. And can we take a second to talk about Top of the Chain, this opening song? The best album opener ever! The Spartan-like harmonization in the chorus and the stomping beats is possibly the best that this rookie group can offer. Gravity is still in the phase of refining those sounds into something they can truly call their own, but with this debut album they really put their best foot forward. Speaking of putting his best foot forward, Kim Jae-hwan, fresh off 101 fame, embarked on his first solo venture with debut album Another in 2019, and it was a wonderful introduction to the multifaceted balladeer to be. Like I said in the one-on-one portion of my favorite albums video, he tends to situate his slower ballad stuff at the first half of the album and then slowly transitioning moods into more fun, light-hearted songs, and by the end, you are rewarded with the best of his discography has to offer. Definitely an album that requires you to get to know him deeper figuratively by basically introducing what people know of him at surface level in the first half. Then as you get more acquainted to this record and you get more and more into the album, then you get more acquainted to his diverse side with progressive house of Blow Me, the funk of Designer, and finally the contemporary jazz number of Melodrama to put it over the top. What a way to say hello to the world, and this album oozes sentiment and personality to introduce the newly debuted soloist. This debut album has some university memory attached to it, which makes it stick longer with me, but even without that slice of memory, this album certainly made me incredibly interested in Hannes' new girl group at the time, being previously liking some of their label mates Romeo and Top Dog's music. So a new girl group with this debut album really upped the ante for me. The intro says it all for me, as their angelic voices of the quintet invited me into their whimsical Alice in Wonderland themed world. Then we are greeted with a 4-time combo hit of powerful innocence, with the chirpy New Jack swing sounds being a signature of the album. They're not just any pure girl group music too, as the powerful synth sound design might be adorned with a little bit of 8-bit bite, similar to video game soundtracks, serve as the centerpiece of this album. You and I's Bossa Nova ties everything into a nice bow with its calming nature that doesn't stray away from the album's concept, while providing something to bring us back down to the ground and serve us as a closing song to end the surprising girl group rookie find. It's like watching a theater or a play. The classic nature of this album really compelled me so much and definitely got me interested in more of Elris's music. On the theme of 2017 rookie finds, WM's first boy group venture in 6 years definitely had lots to show too with their debut EP, On and Off. This album served as the blueprint for releases to come, and they certainly built their discography well to establish a powerful youthful image standing out from other boy groups. But On and Off also has its moments of splendor too. I mentioned before that On and Off always sings with energy and passion, like they really enjoy the music they do, and tracks like Difficult and Original are sung with high spirits paired with the victory of youth. This album might sound simple on first listen, but this album definitely has a timeless quality. The songs are tailor-made to be chirpy dance pop music fit for any time period. There's also a whimsy within this album too, that sparkle, that glitter, that makes this album shine brightly, and what better song to encapsulate that feeling than closing track Cat's Waltz, which has a fairy tale-like magic to the romantic pop ballad. This album is the most recent to make it to my debut albums Hall of Fame, as I had rediscovered my love during my research for Play M's genre breakdown episode. It's one of the first few albums I listened to when I first started listening to more K-pop albums and deep cuts in 2015, and it definitely stood the test of time for me. Aping are known to be the icons of purity for a reason. Their songs are light, airy, and sweet like cotton candy. Similar to Elris, the songs are laced with powerful innocence. However, this album takes us on a journey through a different kind of fairy tale, which is a type where the princess and the prince fall in love. Early Aping definitely is love-struck indeed, as demonstrated by the orchestral pop melody of the intro, as well as the title track. A theme in this video so far is that my favorite debut albums have a killer yet satisfying closing song to bring it back together, and this album delivered. Boo has a familiar, sparkly electro-pop melody that is very reminiscent of the early modules of girl group music, which is propulsive and saccharine in nature. The key change of Boo in the last chorus also helped in establishing a climax that sounds like an ending song in a fairy tale themed music, where the prince and the princess lived happily ever after. If you guys wanted a musical version of a fairy tale book, let Aping be your storytellers. Another early album I listened to when I started listening to albums in 2015, especially listened to it during their Lionheart era when I got more curious about SNSD deep cuts. And honestly, comparing these debut albums with the layout with my channel theme right now, it might feel like the gap is pretty dang big, but powerful, innocent, hopeful girl group albums are really my cup of tea, and they give me a boost of happiness and hope, especially in days where I feel depressed or when life feels like shit and isn't treating me right. It's similar to my affection for spring albums. This is one of the earliest modules of innocent girl group dance pop with lots of classic genres like New Jack Swing, doo-wop, and orchestral pop/orchestral ballads to decorate this album like a fairy tale. It also helps to have both a killer opening and closing song, with their energetic self-titled Ghost Generation as the opening song, and Into the New World, one of my favorite debut songs of all time, as the hopeful closure to this sparkling album, giving it a wonderful closure to this masterpiece. They add just the right amount of spunk and innocent youth charms to carry this album all the way to the finish line. I especially feel nostalgic for this sound in girl groups, as there are barely any with this concept anymore, so that's why I hold albums like this very close to my heart. We have now looked at some of my favorites, now it's time to look at some of your favorites. Chapter 4: An Alternate Dimension. Now that we have looked at my favorites and what makes them work so well, it is time to take a look at what my subbies think is the best debut album for them and what makes them work. I'm obsessed with Into Violet by Purple Kiss. It's exactly my favorite style of music. Cute! I think all the instrumental details in it made a really good first impression, similar to how I felt about the first Red Velvet and EXO songs I've listened to. I really agree, even though they didn't make it into my March album faves, because March is a pretty jam-packed month for album releases, their debut album cannot be disregarded, as I see they are finding their core sound already in this debut album, demonstrated by theatrical flourishes like entitled Ponzonia and Skip Skip, with a haunting concept like a witch in a dark castle boiling potion in her cauldron. I also like their point of instrumental details making a good first impression, which is a good statement to make because any effort the songwriters make in distinguishing the group from the pack by adding personality in music is one excellent way to make an impactful moment. Such as intro Crown, which, might I add, has some amazing ambiance with Swan's vocals and the eerie production, and that's just the intro song. I really love Winner's debut album, SS 2014. So many diverse styles that really show what they're capable of as a group, and honestly, every song still holds up to this day. Okay, first of all, releasing an LP for a debut album is actually a practice not many idol groups tend to do, so Winner definitely had the opportunity of having lots of room for experimentation right off the bat. Granted, there is a greater level of quality assurance that needs to be done for an LP compared to an EP, as the lengthy track listing might arise issues of poor pacing if the producers just decides to haphazardly throw songs in there for the sake of filling up time or got too carried away with showing too much without any cohesion. Truly, there is a balance between diverse musical experimentation and achieving a clear narrative through line for the listeners that producers need to strike well, especially if the LP is the introduction of an artist. While I do think that the tracklist could use a little bit of shuffling to make the tracks flow slightly better, I still agree that it's a very fantastic intro to the world as Winner, which definitely shows their strengths in mellow, sentiment-driven pop music like their titles, Coloring, and Empty, and the third act of the album. Their upbeat songs also play around with early 2010s electropop, a classic boy group sound. I also do remember listening to this album pretty shortly after it came out, and I remember the first time I got murdered by Minho's solo track. That feeling of pure shock turned delight when listening was exactly the trick that Winner has up their sleeves if you listen to much of their discography. My favorite debut album is Trace Born. I absolutely love that they debuted with something more mellow. I'm sad it didn't last long. I really miss Trey too, and they really deserve more love for this album. They really could have brought in some mature concepts in the boy group scene too, as there are a lot of room left on the table for those. I figure any of you who likes UNVS might dig their sound, as this album has flourishes of R&B, funk, and mellow pop ballads roll nicely in a package. It also has that feeling of sentiment and pure emotion that adds a sense of connection for the listeners who are into this sound. It's a shame they couldn't expand on their sound more, as I would be very interested to see that, but sadly, it is what it is. Yeah, that mirae album. Best rookie album in 2021 probably. I mean, fam. Same. So this comment has given several examples, which is awesome. Snooper, Shall We? This album was full of retro bop that really brings me back into 80s and 90s. Oh my god, I really forgot about this album until this comment, and it immediately took me straight back to when I did my first job in early 2016 looking at finance reports and keying data, and I tell you, it's hella boring. Snooper was exactly the burst of happiness I needed to get through the day. If you guys are a fan of Olim's boy groups, especially Infinite and Golden Child, I think this is a good album to be given a fair shake, as this has so much synth-pop goodness thanks to Sweet Tune's signature production. This sort of bright synth-pop sound slash dance pop with 70s slash 80s retro sounds is what Snooper continued to build the discography on for the next several comebacks, so you gotta thank Shall We for providing that strong foundation. Kim Feel Free, his unique voice made me stay actually until I just addicted with the album. Oh, totally! I first found out about Kim Feel on The Call 2, and honestly, his voice is amazing. But the style of music that he does is even more my type. Acoustic music that kicks ass. This album definitely has a seasoned feeling thanks to its mature, deep vocal tone and clear pacing and flow. The upbeat, groovy acoustic stuff is situated in the first half before acoustic ballads bring us down to earth and calm us down in the second half. For a debut album, it sure does sound very mature and commanding. Definitely a good introduction to the world as Kim Feel and its endless potential. Jung Se-woon, ever. The whole album was my genre, and back in the day I wasn't looking forward to him, but knowing Moon Kim composed one of the songs, I checked the whole album and fell hard. Oh god, I feel the same way with Jung Se-woon too. I liked him on Produce. I think he's such a lovely and wholesome dude, but maybe it's me overlooking his skills on the show because I thought he debuted with something really ballady or tame. Man, I was wrong when he dropped his debut album because it was so groovy. It's groovy as heck. Well, I mean, the title track is produced by Groovy Room after all, so I mean, there is so much attitude in his acoustic pop music that I didn't think he'd pull off at first, but he later showed more of this side in releases to come too, especially on his 24 album. He's such a breath of fresh air in the male soloist scene and is in a very similar fashion to Kim Feel. This album is a very good introduction to the world with what he's capable of. And that is a happy blend of easy listening with nuanced groovy / electronic pop production to spice things up. CM Blue, Blue Tory, Busker Buskers first. It's just that these two albums fed my emo high school days and stayed together with me through the years. That is so heartwarming to hear. That is what I like about music. That any kind of music can be a soundtrack to someone's lives. I love hearing my subbies stories with their albums they listen to. These two debut albums are definitely really good too, with CM Blue's groovy introductions as a pop rock band and the debut material being some of my introductory songs into getting to know K-pop further. Also, the iconic Spring album! Busker Busker's debut album is also a lengthy LP with a similar sound to Blue Tory album with its pop rock flair mixed with a little bit of indie rock that took the nation by storm as the poster children of South Korea's spring days. Definitely a definition of an iconic debut album or even album in general in South Korean music history if I've ever seen one. I love when groups set themselves apart from others in their debut album. It doesn't have to only be the music, but could also be the concept, other additional choices, or choices for title tracks. I really like Only One Of's debut with Dot Point Jump Volume 1. Wholeheartedly agree. I think Only One Of is one of the recent 4th gen rookie groups that achieved this objective well, as their concept seems to be this thought-out universe of the exploration of one's self and the relationships between people. I regretted it took me almost a year to fully get into their music and concept, but I'm glad I got into them in the end. Dot Point Jump is the album that I never understood at first, but they definitely cemented their identity with their dark future pop sounds with some experimental production that I got to understand after listening to it with a fresh pair of ears. The way they inject an extra layer of sentiment, especially in Only One of You, Time Leap, and Fragile, are a bonus too for people like myself who like some emotional driven pop music. In my opinion, I also like well-structured albums that have intros and outros and sometimes interludes, like ENHYPEN's Border Day 1. Well, first of all, thank you for finally getting these boys in one of my videos because I really want to talk about their music so badly. They missed out on my third quadrimester album faves of 2020 video. I mean, look, there is a lot of good albums in those 4 months, okay? And also my April album favorites video because like April was a pretty dry month for album releases, so I gotta pick and choose my 12 favorite albums. I also dedicated a separate episode one-on-one, but I mean, it's a pretty dry month, so well, maybe that's also secretly a good thing because if I did talk about their albums, I just ramble for half an hour straight about their comeback. Just like Only One Of, they seem to have this thought-out universe too. However, they live in a world of vampires and darkness, and it is definitely well narrated with their intros and outros. Well narrated indeed, because the narration on them was awesome! I know they aren't the only ones to do this, narration on the intro. 80s does this too with their intro for their debut album too. But I can't stop thinking about how cool it would be if every K-pop group narrated their intros like that. As I walked into the darkness of the world, I see a dim light, just waiting to be let out. Just then, the cries for help got stronger and stronger. I walked past a hazy path, feeling the cries for help getting stronger. It's as if they're looking for me. I rushed towards that light, desperate to find it. Wait for me, Juliet. I'll come save you. I can't help it, guys! And I'm itching to give more narration to more K-pop intros. Of course, my voice acting doesn't hold a candle to Jake's. I have him narrate an audiobook to me anytime. The narration on the intro and outro paired with the instrumental to match the mood really adds an element of storytelling to their debut album, which takes the listeners into their world and gets them immersed into their storytelling. The plot development doesn't only end within this album too, as the outro links to the intro of their second EP and continues their journey, which I find super cool, and not many artists tend to do that. Most kind of seem to end their chapter or story in one album concretely and move on to the next, but to have a clear to be continued moment which links on to the next project is definitely giving me excitement to someone like myself for liking, reading, and telling stories and stuff like that. On a personal note, even though I already like them so much even before debut as they are such darlings, they cemented themselves to ultimate group status with this comeback so hard. Thanks to my 1 week journey of trying to overcome my bias crisis by consuming a lot of their content. Well, this is the rabbit hole I ended up in, but I'm never coming out of it at all. It's fun down here. As for my bias status, you'll see when I make my bias list ascension videos sometime in the future. Seriously, my bias in ENHYPEN has gone through a lot of growing pains. I mean, you can't fault them, they're all pretty cute. No, not pretty cute, they're all very cute and sweet and talented. And that's all for the comments, except for this one, which really ignited a flame for another discussion. Thanks for sowing that seed in my mind. And I'm really excited to have it with you guys when the time comes, but for now, conclusion. Chapter 5, Out of the Wormhole. Whew, we made it to the end. So in conclusion, there are a handful of things that constitute a solid, impactful first impression at debut, and these handy points will definitely help out any artist looking to get their name out there for the first time. We have discussed several points that make debut albums work well. Number 1, a clear, concise concept with a narrative that is understandable to the listeners. 2, songs of genres that the artist is comfortable and confident of doing as long as they do it in the way that they see fit, with some wiggle room for experimentation along the way. 3, good album pacing and flow from start to end with no sudden hiccups or deviation from the establishing narrative. 4, a good opening song that introduces the album in a confident way. Number 5, a wonderful closing song to bring the listeners to a satisfying conclusion, or a thrilling cliffhanger like ENHYPEN does. And 6, a thing that makes one happy, because what good is an album if it doesn't resonate with someone personally? Not saying that every artist has to do this, ultimately, it's up to their own creative freedoms to express themselves in the way that sees fit for them and their target audience. The big takeaway at the end of the day is just be confident in yourself. Be confident in your concept, be confident in your signature sound, be confident in your musicality. When the listener can hear how confident you are and can identify you well, that's when you truly have made a lasting good first impression. I hope you had fun with this video. I'm always trying many things on this channel for things that might stick with me and might not, which can get really confusing for my audience, but I feel like I'm finally at a place where I've found topics that I want to share with you all and discuss about. Of course, that could also change too, but I like talking about music and storytelling, and it's the things that are part of my system. So I'm super stoked to kick off this brand new album discussion series here. We'll have lots of discussions about the type of albums in K-pop, what makes album resonate with you, the fundamentals of what works in an album, what makes album resonate with you and your stories with them, as well as some deep discography analysis from artists that are previously covered on Genre Breakdown, since I have went through their entire discogs for research. There are some interesting findings I've made for each artist that I have yet to talk about in depth in my usual Genre Breakdown episodes, so I'll be more than happy to talk about what makes their albums and discogs work too. Thank you so much for going on this wonderful journey with me. Take care, and as always, be excellent to each other. Bye, loves!